we were talking a little bit about this before, and I wanted to save it for the pod.
Okay.
There's been some discourse that has come up as a result of the back and forth between our guy Drake and
Drizzy.
apparently their guy Kendrick. I like Kendrick too, but not so much right now.
Yeah, I like Kendrick too, but they literally took him and said it's their guy.
Yeah, they trying to say that
Yeah.
We're not going to get too much into that because like
It's crazy.
It went in a direction that like whatever. Mm-hmm. The part of it that I am very interested in that came of that was this conversation about, does Toronto have a sound? And I know my feelings on it, but I would really love to know your feelings on this. Do you think Toronto has a sound? And if it does, how would you describe that sound?
Well, it's, the thing about that is that question is so layered too, bro, because I'm looking at it from an artist point of view and then trying to look at it from an audience point of view from here, thinking if I can recognize what a Toronto sound is.
Okay.
Right? So I would assume, being the artist side, I would say yes, Toronto does have a sound.
And how would you describe that?
Let's say that. I would say the Toronto sound is very cold. It's very smooth. It's very like how you could be cold.
You're describing a beer.
No, but we're not talking about beer. We're talking about a late night cold. You get warm. You're speaking about very passionately about a plethora of things, but it just gives like this feeling of disconnect, and you're trying to connect. You're trying to connect through the sound of. So it's not a raw sound. It's not a super heavy, loud sound either.
It's not a big high energy.
You know what I mean?
thing.
It's not club, everybody going crazy, jumping around and sweating. It's not that. It's something that you can put on and smoke to. It's something you can put on at long drives to. It's something where you can bring a shorty to, put some candles on and lay back and catch a vibe. But the vibe doesn't necessarily have to be sexy. That's why I'm saying it's so layered, because it's a feeling.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is the sound that Drake and 40 started in like the early 2010s.
Okay.
That extended to, Party Next Door and The Weeknd, and actually The Weeknd kind of did his own thing, but it was a similar feeling.
Yeah,
similar feeling.
Similar feeling.
And we're talking about The Weeknd then, not The Weeknd now. Weeknd now is a
yeah. That's a different. That's a global
Flashing
pop.
Lights is not what we're talking about.
No. We're
Great
not
song,
talking about that.
not what we're talking.
We're talking House of Balloons Weeknd right now.
Yeah. I've heard that described as, I believe it was Drake himself described it as how Toronto feels in the winter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm saying cold. It's cold, yet you want to get warm because it's cold. It's a disconnect, and you're trying to bring together during the time when shit is desolate and there's snow everywhere, but you still want to go do something, and maybe it's not necessarily a party, but it's a chill session. It's a heartbreak session, and you're trying to fix your heart by trying to get with somebody else to try to make it work.
Well, you know what?
I mean?
As you say,
temporary shit.
When you're speaking of those two artists in particular, and then a few others that have come after them, and in
Tori
the development
has had
of that
some
sound,
of those vibes too.
It's like the subject matter of those types of songs that became what we could call
the Toronto sound.
At least a Toronto sound, if not the Toronto sound, was definitely more emotional and personal than a lot of other regional sounds that you could say. And then also you got to bring in, there's rapping and there's singing that's like melded together in a way that it's like, is this a rap song or is it an R&B song? Yeah. We almost don't even know. It's just,
we don't know.
It's just that.
It's music.
It's music. When you speak of like the LA sound, it's kind of the type of production, which is like bouncy, especially if you get to the Bay Area. That's the whole California has like a whole thing.
Yeah.
it's bouncy, and the types of things that they're talking about a lot.
Yep.
There's a lot of party talk.
Yep.
There's a lot of, party and like vibe type shit like that.
Yeah.
When you go to the South, you're talking like Atlanta, New Orleans, all that stuff.
1,000%.
There's definitely a sound that's like a mix of slow hip hop and the Florida bass sounds, and that kind of created
trap
what we know now as trap music.
Too. Yeah.
And the subject matter in a lot, and this is not, I'm not saying everybody, but in a lot.
No, it's definitely not everybody.
And like in the South, before trap became the thing.
Before T.I. and Jeezy?
Yeah, it was like Organized Noise and Outkast, Goody Mob. There was a lot of live instrumentation.
A lot.
In it. And that wasn't something that was like prominent in New York hip hop, which was very sample based.
Right.
And like
DJs.
New York felt like concrete.
Yeah.
The Southern music felt like
That's
grass
true.
and barbecues, and the West Coast felt like the beach and lowriders, and
having
Toronto
a good time,
feels
chill out.
like the winter.
You know, everything that you just said, I think the problem that people, especially in the States, have with what is a Toronto sound is because every spot that you were explaining, their accents or their vocal pronunciation of stuff
very
match
regional.
the area.
Very regional.
Every single one of them you said.
But you know what though? That is, when we're speaking of the Toronto sound, past what we were just saying regarding it feeling like winter and like the muted bass and all that kind of stuff, because I definitely agree that is something that is uniquely, distinctly Toronto.
Yeah.
But I think that evolving through the years, and with the types of artists that we're talking about that are from Toronto, I think the Toronto sound is very much what you and I do. And let me explain.
Yeah, I can't wait.
To be from Toronto is to have a multicultural upbringing. We are the most multicultural city in the world, and we grew up around every type of person from every country in the world. We eat all the food.
Yep.
Our slang is a combination
combination
of so many different languages.
Yep.
And I think that is the thing.
Yeah.
In the present day.
Yeah.
That would be the best way that I would describe the Toronto.
1,000%.
And that would speak to what you said regarding accent. This is why Americans such as Ebro, who was like very vocal about this.
Come on, Ebro.
And I'm surprised that Ebro said this because I think that he's a very critical thinker.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's well traveled too. I think he is.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I think that Americans at large don't really understand Toronto unless they've been here.
Yep.
And therefore they don't get like the type of things where like, yo, why is that guy sounding like he's Jamaican? Or why they say wallahi or like all these things?
Yep.
It's like, it's because our culture in this city is a blend of several cultures. And in one sentence you can have proper English and a Spanish slang and a African slang and a Caribbean slang and an Indian slang and an Arab slang all in one conversation.
Bro, it's crazy. They killed Drake for that. They call it code switching, or they call it like he's just making up accents. They don't understand that we all actually do that over here.
That's what I mean is like,
so it's
people that have been here enough.
It's crazy.
Like if you were to ask as an example of an American who spent a lot of time in Toronto, Kyle Lowry. If you were to ask him, he'd be like, y'all just don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is Toronto.
Yeah.
So I get it and I understand. I'm not mad at them
No.
for saying Toronto doesn't have a sound. I just it seems very clear to me that they don't quite understand it.
They don't understand.
But if they were to come through,
and that's why I love what
they would get it.
That's why I love what you're doing. We talked about this off camera, but this is why I love what you're doing. The problem with why they don't understand is because there's not enough people in position or in power to speak about the Toronto experience or what's happening on this side, whether it's actual platforms or artists enough to come to different spots in the States to talk about what they're dealing with, right? Drake doesn't really do interviews. anymore. Weekend is, he's a mystery, right? Yeah. So he won't be there. We know it's with Tory. So there's nobody out there to really represent, so that when Ebro or Charlemagne or any of these guys that are talking about Toronto go, yeah, well, we heard Bieber say the other day on ET tonight that Toronto so we understand that, or we understand this, but they don't know, and we don't have anyone to speak for that.
Yeah, and I think that it just needs to be understood that Toronto is more than the 3 or 4 artists,
and there's that
people know, because again, when we speak about those 3 or 4 artists, they're the 3 or 4 biggest artists in the world.
The fucking
so
world.
So I get why their words carry so much weight, but the city is more than just them. And I just encourage people to come to Toronto, or just, obviously you don't even physically need to come to Toronto. Just go online. Use the internet.
Yeah,
use the internet.
We use the internet for everything else. Why are we not using the internet for that shit?
Exactly.
What? Come on, man.
Exactly. There are a lot of successful people from here doing great things around the world. Not everybody wears the Canada flag on their chest the way some people do. Yeah, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they are from here and have had the Toronto experience and are very proud of coming from here, myself included.
That's a fact. Me too, Crody.
Yo, thank you for tuning in to Live Actually. This was just a clip from this week's episode. If you want to see the full episode, click that link right there in the description. It's the first one right there. You see it right there. And while you're at it, make sure you hit that subscribe, all right? Big love from Four Corners. That's me. And this has been Live Actually. See you on the next one.